Throw it away, Dad. It is garbage. That is what my daughter Megan said as she tossed my late wife's passbook into a bin filled with greasy pizza boxes. She thought she was throwing away a worthless relic from a library worker who never made more than minimum wage. She had no idea she was throwing away $3.8 million and her own freedom. When I walked into the bank the next morning, the director did not just turn pale. He hit a silent alarm that would end my daughter's life as she knew it. But before we get to the handcuffs, let me tell you how a grieving husband became his family represents worst nightmare. Before I continue this story, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family who underestimated your worth. My name is Wallace Bennett, but everyone calls me Wally. I am 67 years old, and I have spent 40 years of my life on the assembly line at a Ford plant just outside Detroit. I have calluses on my hands that will never go away, and a back that aches when it rains, but I have always been proud of the life I built. I thought I had built a family too. I was wrong. The air in the funeral home was so cold I could see my own breath. Or maybe it was just the chill coming from the two people standing next to me. My wife Dorothy lay in a casket at the front of the room. She looked peaceful, which was a mercy considering the sudden heart attack that took her from me 3 days ago. I wanted to weep. I wanted to fall to my knees and scream because the silence in the room was deafening. But I could not. Because my daughter Megan and her husband Brian were not mourning. They were calculating. I stood there in my only black suit, the one I bought for our 25th anniversary. It was a little tight around the shoulders now, but I polished my shoes until they shined because Dorothy always liked a sharp-dressed man. I looked at her face one last time, memorizing the laugh lines around her eyes. And then the whispering started. It was a low hiss like a leaking radiator. I turned my head slightly. Megan was standing near the floral arrangements, holding her phone. She was not looking at her mother. She was looking at the invoice on the screen. "I cannot believe he paid $3,000 for the oak casket," she whispered to Brian. "It is going into the ground, Brian. It is going to rot. Pine would have been half the price. Who is going to know the difference once the dirt is on top of it?" Brian adjusted his tie. He looked bored. He was checking his watch every 30 seconds. He leaned in and whispered back, "Just let it go, babe. The faster we get this over with, the faster we can get to the house and see what we are working with. Check Zillow again. Did the estimate go up?" My hands curled into fists at my sides. My wife was not even cold in the ground yet, and they were checking real estate prices. I wanted to say something. I wanted to tell them to get out. But I was tired. I was so tired. Grief does that to you. It hollows you out until you feel like an old engine block left in the junkyard. The funeral director, Mr. Henderson, approached us with a somber look. He was a kind man who had handled, my father's service years ago. "Mr. Bennett," he said softly, "we are ready to begin the service. I just need to confirm the flower arrangements. You requested yellow roses. Mrs. Bennett is favorite." Before I could nod, Megan stepped in front of me. Her heels clicked sharply on the linoleum floor. "Actually, we need to change that," she said, her voice sharp and professional, the same voice she used to lie to clients at her marketing job. "Yellow roses are ridiculous. They are out of season and the surcharge is insane. We will take the carnations. Take the white ones. The cheapest package you have." Mr. Henderson blinked, looking from her to me. "But the roses are already prepared, Mrs. Cole. Your father specifically asked for them." Megan rolled her eyes, a gesture I had seen 1,000 times since she was a teenager. "Well, unprepare them. Dad is not thinking clearly. He is emotional. He does not realize that spending $500 on flowers that are going to be dead in 24 hours is fiscally irresponsible. The dead cannot smell flowers, Mr. Henderson. Swap them out." She turned to me, a fake smile plastered on her face. Right, Dad. We need to save money for the important things. You have to think about your future now. Mom would not want you wasting money. That was the first dagger, using Dorothy as name to justify her cheapness. Dorothy loved yellow roses. I used to buy her a single yellow rose every Friday with my paycheck. It was our tradition, and Megan knew it. But looking at her cold eyes, I realized she did not care. She did not care about traditions or love or respect. She cared about the bottom line. I took a deep breath. My voice felt rusty, like a door hinge that had not been oiled in years. No, I said. Megan stopped. She looked at me as if the furniture had suddenly started speaking. Excuse me. I looked at Mr. Henderson. Keep the roses. I am paying for them. Not her. Megan let out a huff of annoyance. Fine. Have it your way. Burn through your savings. Just do not come crying to us when you cannot pay the electric bill next month. She walked away, grabbing Brian his arm. I heard her mutter, "He is so stubborn. We need to get power of attorney sooner than I thought." The service was a blur. I sat in the front row alone. Megan and Brian sat 2 rows back. I could hear them tapping on their phones the entire time. They did not cry, not a single tear. When the few neighbors and old friends from the library where Dorothy worked came to offer condolences, Megan put on a show. She dabbed her dry eyes with a tissue and accepted their hugs. "Oh, it is so hard," she would say. "We are just devastated." But the moment they turned their backs, she was checking her makeup in her compact mirror. After the burial, we went back to the house. My house. The house Dorothy and I bought 40 years ago. It is a small place in a working-class neighborhood. Nothing fancy. Just a 3-bedroom ranch with a porch that needs painting, and a garden that Dorothy tended to like it was the Garden of Eden. As soon as we walked through the door, the atmosphere changed. At the funeral home, it was cold indifference. Here it was predatory. I sat down in my recliner, the leather worn smooth by decades of rest after long shifts at the plant. I just wanted to close my eyes. I wanted to imagine Dorothy was in the kitchen making tea. But Brian did not give me a chance. He walked around the living room, running his hand over the walls tapping the plaster. "Good bones," he said, more to himself than to me. "Hardwood under this carpet, I bet. That adds value. The kitchen needs a gut renovation, though. Nobody wants these 1990s cabinets anymore." Megan was already in the hallway. She was not sitting down. She was opening closets. I heard the sound of drawers being pulled open and rifled through. "What are you doing?" I asked. My voice sounded weak even to me. Megan walked into the living room carrying a stack of papers. "We are looking for the important stuff, Dad. The deed, the life insurance policies, Mom's pension documents. We need to get everything organized. You are in no state to handle the paperwork." She dropped the stack on the coffee table. It landed with a heavy thud right next to Dorothy's favorite ceramic coaster. "I do not want to talk about this today," I said, closing my eyes. "Please, just let me rest." "We do not have time to rest," Wally Bryan said. He had stopped calling me Dad years ago. "Look, the market is shifting. We need to list this place while the inventory is low. I have a buddy who can get it on the MLS by Monday. List this place." My eyes snapped open. "What are you talking about?" "I am not selling my house." Megan sighed, sitting on the edge of the sofa, as if she did not want to wrinkle her expensive black dress. "Dad, be realistic. You cannot live here alone. It is too big. The maintenance is too much. The stairs are a hazard." "There are no stairs," I said. "It is a ranch." "That is not the point," she snapped, losing her patience. "The point is, you are 67. You are declining. We saw you at the funeral. You looked confused. You could barely stand up." I was grieving, Megan, I said, my voice rising. I just buried my wife. Exactly, she said, as if that proved her point. You are emotional. You are vulnerable. Look, Brian and I have discussed this. We found a great place for you. It is called Sunny Meadows. It is very affordable. Sunny Meadows. I knew that place. It was a state-funded facility on the other side of town. It smelled like bleach and boiled cabbage. It was where people went to be forgotten. I am not going to a nursing home, I said firmly. I am perfectly capable of taking care of myself. For now, maybe, Brian said, crossing his arms. But what about in 6 months? What if you fall? What if you leave the stove on? We cannot be running over here every day to check on you. We have lives, Wally. We have careers. Careers. Brian was a real estate agent who hadn't sold a house in 6 months. He spent most of his time at the casino downtown. And Megan was a marketing consultant, which mostly meant she posted photos of her brunch on Instagram and bought clothes she could not afford. I knew they were drowning in debt. I knew about the $80,000 Brian owed to some bad people. I knew they were leasing a BMW they could not make the payments on. They did not want to help me. They wanted to liquidate me. We are doing this for you, Dad, Megan said, her voice dripping with fake concern. We just want you to be safe. Now, where is Mom keeps the important documents? I know she had a box. She always hid things. She stood up and walked toward our bedroom. Dorothy's bedroom. Do not go in there, I warned, trying to push myself out of the chair. But she was already gone. I heard the closet door slide open. I heard the sound of shoe boxes being thrown to the floor. I forced my aching legs to move. I walked down the hallway, my heart pounding in my chest. Megan was in the bedroom, kneeling on the floor. She had pulled out the old cedar chest from under the bed. That was Dorothy's private box. She kept keepsakes in there. Letters I wrote her when I was in the army. Photos of Megan when she was a baby. Her grandmother is rosary beads. Megan was tossing things aside like they were trash. Old photos scattered on the carpet. A locket necklace slid under the dresser. Nothing, she muttered. Just junk. Sentimental garbage. Where is the policy? She dug deeper. Her hand pulled out a small gray book. It was old. The cover was cracked leather peeling at the corners. It was a bank passbook, the kind they stopped issuing 20 years ago. She looked at it and laughed. A cruel barking sound. Look at this, Brian, she shouted. Brian leaned against the doorframe. What is it? A passbook, Megan said, flipping it open. First National Bank. Last entry is from 1999. Balance is... She squinted. It is illegible. Probably $5. She looked at me with pure contempt. This is what Mom left. A dusty book and a house full of old furniture. She never had any money anyway. She was a librarian, Dad. She made $10 an hour. She probably spent every dime she ever made on those stupid porcelain cats she collected. Megan, that is my wife you are talking about, I said, my voice trembling with rage. I am just stating facts. Dad, she said, standing up. She held the passbook by the corner like it was contaminated. This is useless. The account is probably closed. It is just clutter. She walked past me toward the kitchen. I followed her. She stopped at the large metal trash can we kept by the back door. It was full of garbage from the wake. Paper plates smeared with potato salad, empty beer cans, greasy napkins. She held the passbook over the bin. Give that to me, I said, reaching out. Why, Dad, she sneered. It is trash. We need to clear this house out if we are going to sell it. You need to learn to let go of things that have no value. She dropped it. I watched in slow motion as the little gray book fell. It landed right on top of a slice of half-eaten pepperoni pizza. A smear of red sauce stained the cracked leather cover. There, she said, dusting her hands off. One less piece of junk. Now sit down, Dad. Brian has the power of attorney papers in the car. We are going to sign them today so we can list the house tomorrow. And do not worry about the Sunny Meadows application. I already filled it out for you. You just need to sign the bottom line. Brian clapped his hands together. Great. I will go get the paperwork. We can celebrate with a beer afterward, Wally. I think there is a six-pack left in the fridge. I stood there staring at the trash can. Something inside me snapped. It was not a loud snap. It was quiet. It was the sound of a cable finally breaking under too much tension. Get out, I said. Megan stopped halfway to the living room. She turned around, her face twisted in confusion. What did you say? I said get out, both of you, get out of my house. Megan laughed nervously. Dad, you are tired. You do not mean that. We are trying to help you. You are trying to bury me, I said, looking up. My eyes were dry now. The tears were gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. You threw my wife's memories in the trash. You insulted her, and you think I am going to sign over my life to you. Get out. Brian stepped forward, trying to be intimidating. He was a tall man, but he was soft. He had never worked a day of hard labor in his life. Look, Wally, you are emotional. We are not leaving until we get this sorted. We have debts, okay? We need to move this process along. Ah, I said. There it is. The truth. You have debts. Megan shot Brian a look that could kill. Dad, ignore him. We just want you to be secure. I walked over to the back door and opened it wide. The cold Detroit air rushed in, biting and sharp. Leave, now, or I call the police and tell them you are trespassing. And I will tell them about the $80,000 Brian owes to the bookies. I know about it. Dorothy knew about it. Do not think we were blind. Megan's face went pale. She looked at Brian, then back at me. You would not. Try me, I said. She grabbed her purse. Fine. Stay here. Rot in this house alone. But do not call us when you fall and break your hip. Do not call us when the bank takes the house because you cannot pay the taxes. You are on your own, old man. She marched out the door. Brian followed her, muttering curses under his breath. I slammed the door shut and locked it. I engaged the deadbolt. Then I slid the chain lock into place. The house was silent again, but this time it did not feel empty. It felt safe. I walked over to the trash can. My knees popped as I knelt down on the linoleum floor. I did not care about the dignity. I did not care about the grease. I reached into the bin, pushing aside the pizza boxes and the beer cans. My hand closed around the cool leather of the passbook. I pulled it out. I grabbed a clean dish towel and wiped away the tomato sauce. I cleaned it gently, like I was cleaning a wound. I sat at the kitchen table and turned on the overhead light. I put on my reading glasses. Megan was right. The book was old. The pages were yellowed. The first few entries were small. Deposits of $20, $50. The interest was pennies. But then I flipped to the very last page. There was something tucked inside the back sleeve. It was not a machine entry. It was handwritten in ink. Dorothy's neat cursive handwriting. It was a date, from 3 weeks ago, and next to it was a number. I blinked. I wiped my glasses and looked again. 3,850,000, $3,850,000, and underneath the number a short note. For Wally. Do not let Megan see this. Code is our anniversary. I stared at the number. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a piston. 3.8 million. Where did Dorothy get this? She was a librarian. We lived paycheck to paycheck. We clipped coupons. We drove a 10-year-old Ford Taurus. Was she suffering from dementia? Was this just a fantasy she wrote down before she died? But Dorothy was the most practical woman I ever met. She never fantasized about money. She managed every cent we had. I ran my thumb over the ink. It was real. I looked at the trash can where my daughter had thrown it. She had held nearly $4 million in her hand and threw it away because the cover was dirty. A strange feeling washed over me. It was not joy, not yet. It was a cold, burning resolve. Megan thought I was a helpless old man. She thought I was junk, just like this book. I closed the passbook and slipped it into my inside jacket pocket, right next to my heart. Tomorrow, I was going to the bank, and I had a feeling that Sunny Meadows was not going to my future home. But I had no idea that walking through those bank doors was going to trigger a chain of events that would bring down my entire family. I sat there in the dark kitchen, clutching the book, waiting for the sun to rise. The mourning period was over. The war had just begun. The morning sun hit the cracked pavement of Detroit, but it brought no warmth. I stood at the bus stop, shivering in my charcoal suit. It was the same suit I wore to bury Dorothy 3 days ago. It smelled faintly of lilies and mothballs. It was tight around the waist and the cuffs were frayed, but it was the only armor I had. I clutched the inside pocket of my jacket, where the leather passbook rested against my ribs like a hot coal. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a violent, angry vibration. I knew who it was before I even looked at the screen. Megan. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again, immediately, and again. She was relentless. I finally answered, holding the phone away from my ear. "Dad! Where are you?" she screamed. Her voice was shrill, piercing through the morning traffic noise. "I am at the house and the door is locked." "Why is the chain on?" "I am running errands, Megan," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Just like I told you in the note." "Errands," she scoffed. "You do not have errands. You have a deadline. Brian found a buyer for the house. A cash offer, Dad. They are coming at 4 o'clock to do a walkthrough. I need you here to sign the papers. If you are not back in an hour, I am calling the locksmith to drill the deadbolt, and I am calling Sunny Meadows to come pick you up tonight. Do you hear me? Tonight." I looked down the street, watching the city bus approach. It was a hulking gray beast, belching exhaust. "Do not touch my house, Megan," I said quietly. "It is not your house anymore," she hissed. "It is an asset, and we are liquidating it. You have 1 hour." The line went dead. I stared at the phone. My own daughter was treating me like a squatter in the home I had paid for with 40 years of sweat. She was going to drill the locks. She was going to throw me into a state facility before the sun went down. I stepped onto the bus. It was crowded with people heading to shifts I used to work. Tired faces, calloused hands. I squeezed into a seat near the back. I felt small. I felt old. Maybe Megan was right. Maybe I was just a confused old man chasing a ghost. Maybe the number in the book was just a figment of Dorothy's imagination. But then I remembered the grease stain on the cover. I remembered Megan throwing it in the trash. Junk, she had called it. No, I was not going back. Not until I knew the truth. The bus dropped me off downtown in front of First National Bank. It was a massive building of glass and steel towering over the street. It looked more like a fortress than a bank. I adjusted my tie, trying to look like I belonged there. But as I saw my reflection in the revolving doors, I saw the truth. I looked like a retired factory worker in a cheap suit who had lost his way. I walked inside. The air conditioning was freezing. The lobby was silent, except for the clicking of expensive heels on marble floors. There were no tellers behind bars anymore. Just sleek pods and young people tapping on tablets. I walked up to the nearest station. A young woman stood there. Her name tag read Jessica. She had perfect makeup and a look of supreme boredom. She was scrolling on her phone and did not even look up until I cleared my throat. "Can I help you?" she asked, not bothering to hide her irritation. "I need to check a balance," I said. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the passbook. I placed it on the pristine white counter. It looked out of place like a dirty rag on a wedding dress. Jessica looked at the book. Then she looked at me. A smirk curled the corner of her lip. "Sir, what is this?" "It is a passbook," I said. "My wife is. My late wife is a count." She laughed. A short, dismissive sound. "Sir, we have not used these in 20 years. Everything is digital now. Do you have a debit card? Or the app?" "No," I said. "I have this." She picked up the book with 2 fingers, as if she did not want to catch a disease. She flipped it open. She saw the handwritten entries from 1999. She saw the cracked spine. "This is an antique," she said, sliding it back to me. "The account is probably dormant or closed. We purge inactive accounts after 7 years. There is nothing I can do with this." "Please," I said, my voice tightening. "Just check the number." "Sir, look at the line behind you," she said, pointing to 2 men in suits who were checking their watches. "I cannot waste time on souvenirs. If you want to open a new account, you can make an appointment online. Otherwise, you need to leave." She was dismissing me. Just like Megan. Just like Brian. To her, I was just a waste of space. A confused old man holding onto a piece of garbage. I felt the anger rising again. The same cold anger I felt in my kitchen when I ordered my daughter out. I was not going to be invisible. Not today. "I am not leaving," I said, my voice echoing slightly in the cavernous lobby. Jessica sighed, rolling her eyes. "Sir, do not make me call security. You are causing a disturbance. Take your little book and go home." I slammed my hand down on the counter. The sound was like a gunshot. The entire lobby went silent. The men in suits stopped checking their watches. Jessica jumped back, her phone clattering to the desk. "I have been banking here since before you were born, young lady," I said, my voice shaking, not with fear, but with fury. "I built the cars you drive. I paved the roads you walk on. You will not dismiss me." I pushed the book back toward her. "Check the number, or get me your manager, now." Jessica looked at me. She saw the fire in my eyes. She saw that I was not moving. Her arrogance faltered. She looked around nervously. "Fine," she huffed. "But when the system rejects it, do not say I did not warn you." She grabbed the book aggressively. She turned to her computer and started typing. She hammered the keys loudly, making a show of how annoyed she was. I waited. My heart was pounding in my ears. What if she was right? What if it was closed? What if Dorothy had just written a number down to give me hope? Jessica hit the enter key with a flourish. I watched her face. I expected the smirk to return. I expected her to tell me to get out. But the smirk vanished. Her eyes went wide. Her skin, which was perfectly tanned a moment ago, turned the color of ash. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She stopped typing. She pulled her hands away from the keyboard as if it were burning hot. She looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. The silence stretched. It was heavy. It was terrifying. "Is there a problem?" I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper. She did not answer. She stood up slowly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. She was trembling. She looked terrified. "Sir," she stammered. Her voice was an octave higher than before. "Sir, please, do not move." "What is it?" I asked, stepping forward. "Please," she said, backing away, holding her hands up. "Just stay right there. I need to. I need to get Mr. Abernathy, the director." She did not wait for an answer. She turned and ran toward the glass-walled office at the back of the lobby. She did not walk. She ran. I stood there alone at the counter. The men behind me were whispering. I looked at the computer screen, but it was turned away from me. I looked at the passbook sitting on the counter. It looked innocent. Just a small gray book. But whatever was on that screen had just terrified a woman who thought she was untouchable. I checked my watch. Megan gave me an hour. I had 30 minutes left before she drilled the locks. But as I watched the bank director rush out of his office, his face pale and sweating, I had a feeling that the locks on my house were about to be the least of my problems. Mr. Abernathy emerged from his glass-off office like a king descending from his throne to deal with a peasant uprising. He was a man who clearly spent more on his haircuts than I spent on groceries in a year. His suit was a sharp navy blue, tailored to hide a softening midsection, and his shoes clicked on the marble floor with the rhythm of authority. He did not look at me. He looked at the passbook in Jessica's hand, as if it were a dead rat she had just found in the break room. "Mr. Bennett," I presume he said, his voice smooth and cold. "Jessica tells me you are insisting on accessing a legacy account. I must warn you, sir, that attempting to pass bad checks or fraudulent documents is a federal crime. We take security very seriously here." I straightened my back. My knees popped audibly in the silent lobby, but I did not flinch. "I am not a criminal, Mr. Abernathy. I am a widower, and I want to know what is in this book." He sighed a long, suffering sound that shook his jowls. "Very well. Come into my office. Let us get this over with so we can all go back to our actual work." He turned on his heel and marched back toward the glass box. I followed him, clutching the passbook. The walk felt like the longest mile I had ever walked on the factory floor. I could feel the eyes of the security guard boring into my back. I could feel the weight of the deadline Megan had given me. 45 minutes left. The office was freezing. It smelled of leather polish and expensive coffee. Abernathy sat behind a desk that was big enough to land a plane on. He gestured vaguely at a chair opposite him. I sat down. The leather was slippery, and I felt myself sliding forward. I planted my feet firmly on the plush carpet. "Hand it here," he said, extending a manicured hand. I gave him the book. He opened it with a dramatic flair, flipping past the yellowed pages filled with Dorothea's small deposits. $10 here, $20 there. He chuckled when he saw the dates. 1999. "Mr. Bennett, this account has likely been purged from our system for decades. Banks do not keep records open for ghosts." Then he flipped to the back page. He stopped. He saw the handwritten number. 3.8 million. He looked up at me over his rimless glasses. His expression was not one of shock. It was one of pity mixed with disgust. "Did you write this?" he asked, tapping the number with a fingernail. "Is this some kind of joke? Do you think writing a number in a book makes it real?" "This is forgery, sir, and it is a very poor attempt at that. My wife wrote that I said my voice tight. Check the account." "Fine," Abernathy snapped. He swiveled his chair toward his computer. He began typing furiously. I watched his reflection in the window behind him. He looked bored. He was probably already composing the email to security to have me escorted out. He entered the account number from the front of the book. He hit enter. I held my breath. I squeezed the armrests of the chair until my knuckles turned white. Nothing happened for a long moment. The hum of the computer fan seemed to get louder, and then the room changed. It was subtle at first. A low electronic hum started buzzing from the corners of the ceiling. Then the lights in the office dimmed automatically, shifting from a bright white to a dull amber emergency hue. On Abernathy's screen, a large red box popped up. I could see the reflection in the glass behind him. It was flashing. Abernathy stopped moving. His hand hovered over the mouse. Then came the sound. It was a heavy mechanical thud, like the sound of a blast door closing at the plant. It came from the office door behind me. I turned around. A thick steel bolt had slid out from the door frame, engaging the lock automatically. The blinds on the glass walls began to descend, motorized and swift, cutting us off from the view of the lobby. We were sealed in. Abernathy spun his chair around. The arrogance was gone, washed away completely. In its place was a look of absolute primal terror. His face had drained of all color, leaving him looking like a slab of raw dough. Sweat had instantly beaded on his forehead. He stood up, knocking his expensive chair over. It crashed to the floor, but he did not seem to notice. He backed away from the desk, pressing his back against the bookshelf. "Mr. Bennet," he whispered, his voice trembling so hard it cracked. "Please, do not move. Keep your hands where I can see them." My heart hammered against my ribs. What was happening? Had I triggered a silent alarm? Did they think I was robbing the bank? I looked at the screen. The red box was pulsing. I could not read the text from this angle, but it looked like a warning. "What did you do?" I asked, standing up. "Why is the door locked?" "Sit down," Abernathy shrieked, holding his hands up as if to ward off a blow. "Sit down right now. I have not done anything. The system did it. It is a level 5 lockout." Level 5? That sounded like something from the movies, or the military. I sank back into the chair. My mind was racing. Dorothy, my sweet, quiet Dorothy, who knit sweaters for the grandchildren and volunteered at the soup kitchen. What had she done? Had she stolen this money? Was she a criminal? Was I sitting here holding the evidence of a bank robbery from 30 years ago? The thought made me sick. I had defended her honor to Megan. I had thrown my daughter out of my house to protect this book. And now it looked like I was about to be arrested for her crimes. "Mr. Bennet," Abernathy said, his voice shaking. "Who are you?" "Who are you really?" "I am a retired factory worker," I said, spreading my hands. "I told you. This is my wife's book." "No," Abernathy said, shaking his head rapidly. "No, that is impossible. This account, this specific sequence of numbers, it is tagged as a dead man is switch." "A what?" "A dead man is switch," he repeated. "It is a protocol, a federal protocol. It means this account has been dormant under high-level encryption. It was set to trigger a silent alarm if anyone tried to access it without the biometric key, or if the account holder was flagged as deceased in the Social Security database." He swallowed hard. "It alerts the authorities immediately. Not the local police, Mr. Bennet. The FBI. They are already on their way. The door's locked to keep the person of interest inside." I felt the blood drain from my face. The FBI. For a librarian is savings account. "My wife was a librarian," I stammered. "She checked out books. She made $10 an hour." Abernathy looked at the screen again, then back at me. He looked at me differently now. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with a dawning realization. He stepped forward cautiously, moving around the desk. He looked at the passbook lying on the blotter. "Mr. Bennet," he said softly, "librarians do not have level 5 encryption on their accounts. Librarians do not have $3.8 million sitting in a holding fund that generates more interest in a month than you probably made in a year. And librarians certainly do not have a flagging note on their file that says, 'Do not detain.' Protect at all costs." He pointed a shaking finger at the screen. I looked. The red box had stopped flashing. Text was scrolling across the screen now. "Account verified. Identity confirmed, Dorothy Bennet. Status deceased. Beneficiary Wallace Bennet. Protocol Alpha activated." "Protocol Alpha," Abernathy whispered. "I have only seen this in the training manual. I never thought I would see it in real life." He looked at me, and for the first time he looked me in the eye. Man to man. "Mr. Bennet," he said, pulling a handkerchief from his pocket and wiping his face, I think I owe you an apology, and I think you need to sit tight, because the people coming through that door in about 5 minutes are not coming to arrest you. They are coming to salute you, or protect you. I am not sure which. He walked over to a small cabinet in the corner. His hands were still shaking as he poured 2 glasses of water. He handed one to me. "Drink," he said. "You look like you're going to pass out." I took the glass. My hand was shaking as much as his. "My wife," I whispered. "Dorothy." "Who was she?" Abernathy took a long gulp of water. He leaned against his desk, looking at the locked steel door. "I do not know, Mr. Bennett," he said. "But whoever she was the most powerful person to ever bank at this branch. And she left you something much more dangerous than money." He tapped the passbook. "She left you a weapon, and I think you are going to need it." Just then, a heavy pounding echoed from the lobby. We could hear shouting, heavy boots running on the marble. Abernathy looked at his watch. 3 minutes, he said. "That is a record response time." I sat there clutching the water glass, thinking of the pizza grease on the cover of the book, thinking of Megan calling it junk. My wife was not a librarian. Or maybe she was. But she was something else, too. And she had been playing a game I did not even know existed for 40 years. The locks on the office door disengaged with a loud clank. The door swung open. But it was not the police who walked in. It was a man in a sharp gray suit followed by 2 uniformed officers. He did not look like a cop. He looked like a lawyer who cost $1,000 an hour. He looked at Abernathy, then he looked at me. "Mr. Bennett," he asked. I nodded. "My name is Detective Sullivan," he said. "We have been waiting for this account to become active for a very long time. We need to talk about your daughter. And we need to talk about the tea your wife was drinking before she died." The glass slipped from my hand. It shattered on the floor. The tea. Dorothy drank herbal tea every night for her heart. Megan brought it to her. Every single week. Special blends, she said. Expensive stuff. I looked at the detective. And in that moment, the grief in my chest turned into something cold and hard and sharp. It turned into a blade. "My wife did not die of a heart attack, did she?" I asked, my voice dead calm. Detective Sullivan shook his head slowly. "No, sir. She did not. And she knew it was happening. That is why she sent you here." I looked at the passbook. It was not just money. It was justice. And I was about to serve it cold. Detective Sullivan did not wait for me to process the horror of his words. He gestured to the steel door at the back of the office that led to the secure vault area. "We need to open the box, Mr. Bennett. Your wife left specific instructions that upon the activation of the Protocol Alpha, the contents were to be viewed immediately by you and legal counsel." Mr. Abernathy, still looking like he had seen a ghost, fumbled with his master keys. His hands were shaking so badly he dropped them once on the plush carpet. I stood up, but my legs felt like lead pipes. The tea. The special herbal tea Megan brought every Sunday. The way Dorothy would smile and drink it, even though she said it tasted bitter. She did it to please her daughter. She did it because she wanted to believe Megan cared. We walked down a long corridor lined with safety deposit boxes. It was silent and cold like a mausoleum. My footsteps echoed the heavy tread of a man walking to his own execution. Sullivan walked beside me, his presence heavy and reassuring. He was not just a cop. He was the sword Dorothy had left behind. Box number 3850, the same as the code. Abernathy inserted his key. I inserted the key that had been taped inside the back cover of the passbook. I had almost missed it when I cleaned off the pizza sauce. It turned with a smooth mechanical click. The box was long and heavy metal. Abernathy pulled it out and carried it to a private viewing table in the center of the vault. He set it down and stepped back, his job done. Sullivan nodded at me. Open it, Mr. Bennett. I lifted the lid. I expected gold. I expected diamonds. I expected the things rich people hide. Instead, I saw paper. Stacks and stacks of paper. On top was a thick binder with a label that read, "The Nest Egg." I opened it. It was not cash. It was better. It was stock certificates. But not just any stocks. I saw the names. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, dates going back to the early 80s. I looked at Sullivan confused. Dorothy was a librarian. She made minimum wage. She bought her clothes at Goodwill. Sullivan smiled a sad, grim smile. Your wife was the head archivist for the business section of the Detroit Public Library for 30 years, Mr. Bennett. She read every financial newspaper, every market analysis, and every trend report before anyone else in this city. She did not just check out books. She studied them. She invested $5 here, $10 there. She played the long game while everyone else was trying to get rich quick. She was a silent genius. I turned the pages. The numbers were staggering. The compound interest alone was more than I made in a decade at the plant. She had built an empire from a library desk, and she never told a soul, not even me. She wanted to surprise you, Sullivan said softly. She wrote in her file that she was planning to reveal it on your 50th anniversary. She wanted to buy you that Mustang you always talked about and take you to Italy. Italy. We had talked about Italy since we were 20. But she never made it to the 50th anniversary, I whispered, because of the tea. Sullivan reached into the box and pulled out a second item. It was a black composition notebook, the kind kids use in school. It was taped shut with red evidence tape. This is the hard part, Mr. Bennett. This is why we are here. He cut the tape with a small pocket knife. He opened the book to a bookmark. It was a Ziploc bag taped to the page. Inside the bag were 3 small blue pills. Read the entry, Sullivan said, pointing to the handwriting. I knew that script. It was Dorothy's. But it was shaky. Weak. September 14th, the entry read. Megan came over today. She was angry about Brian's gambling debts again. She asked about the life insurance. I told her it was not much. She made me tea. It tasted metallic. I pretended to drink it, but I spit it into my napkin when she went to the bathroom. I saved the pills she left on the counter. They are not my heart medication. They look different. I turned the page. My hands were trembling so violently, I almost tore the paper. September 21st. She brought soup. I feel dizzy. My heart is racing, then slowing down. I took the sample to the private lab downtown. I used the dividend money. I used the name Mrs. Smith. I am scared, Wally. I am scared of our daughter. October 1st. The results came back. Digoxin. She is switching my blood pressure meds with digoxin. In high doses, it causes cardiac arrest. It looks like a natural heart attack. She is killing me, Wally. She is killing me slowly to pay off Brian's bookie. I cannot tell Wally yet. He would kill them. He would go to prison. I need to protect him. I need to set the trap. If I die, it was Megan. Activate the account. Save Wally. I stopped reading. The room spun. The air felt thin. I grabbed the edge of the table to keep from falling. Digoxin. It is a heart medication, but if you give it to someone who does not need it or give them too much, it stops the heart. It kills you, and it leaves no trace unless you look for it. Megan. My little girl. The girl I taught to ride a bike. The girl I walked down the aisle. She had looked her mother in the face, smiled, and handed her a cup of poison. Week after week, and Dorothy knew. She sat there dying, feeling her heart fail, and she documented it. She gathered evidence. She built a case from her deathbed, because she knew I was too soft to see the truth. She knew I would never believe it unless I saw it in her own handwriting. I looked at the baggie of blue pills, the murder weapon. Why didn't she call the police? I choked out. Why didn't she tell me? Sullivan placed a hand on my shoulder. Because she knew the law, Mr. Bennett. Without proof, it is just an old woman's word against her daughter. Megan would have claimed your wife was senile. She would have put Dorothy in a home just like she plans to do to you. Dorothy needed indisputable proof. She sacrificed herself to get it. And she set this trap so that if Megan tried to throw you away, you would find the truth. I fell into the chair. A sound ripped out of my throat, a howl of pure animal pain. I cried for my wife. I cried for her fear. I cried for the loneliness she must have felt sitting in that kitchen drinking tea with a monster. I cried until my chest hurt, until my eyes burned. And then the tears stopped. Just like that. They stopped. I looked at the passbook. $3.8 million. I looked at the notebook. The evidence of murder. I looked at the bag of pills. Something inside me hardened. It was like the molten steel at the factory cooling into something unbreakable. The grief evaporated. The sadness vanished. All that was left was a cold, dark rage. Megan thought I was a senile old man. She thought I was a burden. She thought she had won. She had thrown my wife's life into the garbage. I stood up. I wiped my face with my handkerchief. I buttoned my cheap suit jacket. Mr. Bennett, Sullivan asked, watching me closely, "Are you okay?" I looked at him. My eyes were dry. My hands were steady. "No, detective. I am not okay. I am angry." Sullivan nodded, a grim look of approval on his face. "Good. Anger is useful. We need you to be angry, because we cannot arrest her yet." I frowned. "Why not? You have the diary. You have the pills. We have evidence of a crime," Sullivan said. "But we need a confession, or an overt act. We need her to try to do it to you. We need to catch her in the act of fraud or attempted murder against you. We need to nail the coffin shut so tight she never sees daylight again." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small black device. It was a wire. "We need you to go back there, Mr. Bennett. We need you to play the role she cast you in. The confused, helpless old man. We need you to let her think she has won. We need you to sign those papers she wants you to sign. And we need you to get her to talk about Dorothy." He paused, looking at the money in the box. "And we are going to use this. The bank is going to issue you a special credit card today. A black card linked to this account, but with a limit we control. You are going to use it to bait the trap. Greed is her weakness, Mr. Bennett. She killed for pennies. Imagine what she will do when she thinks she has hit the jackpot." I looked at the wire. I looked at the money. I thought about Megan sneering at the funeral. I thought about Brian measuring my living room for a sale. I thought about Dorothy dying alone in that kitchen. I picked up the wire. "Wire me up," I said. Abernathy, the bank director, stepped forward. He looked terrified, but he also looked eager to help. "Mr. Bennett, we will expedite the card, and we will have a team monitoring the transaction. You will have full access." I nodded. "I am going home," I said. "My daughter wants to sell my house. I think I will let her try." Sullivan smiled. It was a shark's smile. "That is the spirit. Just remember, Mr. Bennett, you are not a victim anymore. You are the bait, and she is a starving rat." I took the passbook and put it back in my pocket. It felt heavier now. It carried the weight of a life. I walked out of the vault. I walked through the lobby. I did not look like a confused old man anymore. I felt like a soldier going back to the front lines. Megan was waiting for a helpless father to come home and surrender. She was about to meet the man who was going to burn her world to the ground. I checked my watch. The hour was up. She was probably drilling the locks right now. Good, I thought. Let her break in. Let her feel powerful. Because when the trap snapped shut, I wanted her to be standing right in the center of it. I stepped out into the Detroit sunshine. It was still cold, but I didn't feel it. I was burning up from the inside. I hailed a cab. "Take me to Maple Street," I told the driver, "and step on it. I have a date with a real estate agent." The war had moved from the bank to my living room, and I was bringing heavy artillery. The cold circle of the microphone taped to my chest felt like a second heartbeat thumping against my skin. It was a small device, barely the size of a quarter, but it felt heavy with purpose. I buttoned my shirt over it, ensuring the fabric lay flat. I adjusted my tie, checking my reflection in the polished glass of the bank director's office. I did not see a millionaire. I did not see a man with an army of lawyers and federal agents behind him. I saw an old, tired factory worker in a cheap suit. I saw exactly what Megan wanted to see. Detective Sullivan stood by the window watching the street below. He turned to me, his face grim. "Mr. Bennett, I need you to understand the stakes here. The diary and the pills are powerful evidence, but in a court of law, a good defense attorney could tear them apart. They could claim your wife was confused. They could claim she planted the pills herself due to mental decline. We need corroboration. We need Megan to admit she manipulated you. We need her to force you to sign that house over while you are under duress. We need the jury to see her cruelty firsthand." I nodded, buttoning my jacket. "I understand, Detective. You want me to be the lamb so you can catch the wolf." Sullivan cracked a small, humorless smile. "Exactly. But remember, you are a wolf in sheep's clothing now. Do not break character. If she senses you have any power, she will retreat. She will lawyer up and we might lose the chance to get her for the homicide charge. We need her to feel safe. We need her to feel victorious." Mr. Abernathy cleared his throat. He was holding a small black envelope. He extended it to me with both hands, like he was presenting a flag to a head of state. "Mr. Bennett, this is for you. It is the obsidian card. It is linked directly to the trust. There is no spending limit. It is accepted anywhere in the world. But for now, keep it hidden. Use it only when the trap is ready to spring." I took the envelope. The card inside was heavy, made of metal, not plastic. It was cold to the touch. I slipped it into my wallet behind my expired union card and a photo of Dorothy. It sat there, a silent promise of the power I now held. A nuclear option waiting for the push of a button. I took a deep breath. I let my shoulders slump. I relaxed the muscles in my face, letting the lines of grief and exhaustion show. I made my hands tremble slightly. I practiced the look of a man who had lost everything. "I am ready," I said, my voice raspy. Sullivan handed me a small earbud. "Keep this in your pocket for now. We will be listening to everything. We have a surveillance van parked 2 streets over. If things get physical, if you are in immediate danger, say the word Dorothy, and we will break the door down. Otherwise, let it play out. Let them dig their own graves." I walked out of the bank and into the afternoon light. The city looked different now. The noise of the traffic, the smell of exhaust, it all felt sharper. I hailed a cab, my movements slow and deliberate. "Take me to the suburbs," I told the driver, giving him my address. "And drive slow. I am in no hurry to get home." The ride gave me time to think. I thought about Dorothy. I thought about the woman who saved coupons to buy me a new fishing rod for my birthday. The woman who wore the same winter coat for 10 years, so Megan could have braces. She had been hiding a fortune, not out of greed, but out of fear. She had been protecting us from the monster we raised. And now I had to go back into the belly of the beast. When the cab pulled up to my curb, my heart stopped. There was a white van in the driveway. A massive dumpster had been dropped on my front lawn, crushing the hydrangeas Dorothy had planted 30 years ago. Megan and Brian were there. They were coming out of the front door, their arms full of clothes. My wife is clothes. I watched through the cab window as Megan tossed a bundle of fabric into the dumpster. I saw a flash of blue. It was Dorothea's Sunday dress, the one she wore to church, the one she was wearing in the last photo I took of her. Next came Brian carrying a box of books. Dorothea's books. Her romance novels, her gardening guides, her collection of poetry. He dumped them over the side of the metal bin like he was emptying a litter box. Rage, hot and blinding, surged up my throat. I wanted to jump out of the cab and tear them apart with my bare hands. I wanted to scream. I wanted to show them the black card and tell them I could buy and sell their miserable lives 100 times over. But I touched the microphone on my chest. I remembered Sullivan's words. Let them dig. I paid the driver, my hands shaking. This time the shaking was not an act. It was the only way to keep from exploding. I stepped out onto the sidewalk. I hunched my shoulders. I looked at the ground. I walked up the driveway looking like a man who had just been told he had a week to live. Megan saw me first. She dusted off her hands, her face set in a mask of annoyance. Finally she shouted, "You are late. The buyer is going to be here in 2 hours. Look at this place, Dad. It is a hoarder's nest. We are doing you a favor getting rid of all this junk." Junk. That word again. I stopped in front of the dumpster. I looked at the sleeve of Dorothea's blue dress hanging over the rusty metal edge. It fluttered in the wind like a flag of surrender. I forced myself to look away. I forced myself to look at Megan with watery, defeated eyes. "It does not matter," I said, my voice breaking perfectly. "It does not matter anymore, Megan." She stopped. She looked at me closely, searching for a fight. When she did not find one, her posture relaxed. She smiled a shark-like grin. "What happened at the bank, Dad? Did they laugh you out of there?" I nodded slowly. I stared at my shoes. They said it was expired. I lied. They said the account was closed in '99. There was nothing. Just a clerical error. It is worthless. Just an old book. I saw the relief wash over her face. It was instantaneous. Her shoulders dropped and she exchanged a look of pure triumph with Brian. They were not disappointed that there was no money. They were happy. Because if I had money, I had power. And if I was broke, I was theirs. "I told you," Brian said, chuckling as he wiped sweat from his forehead. "I told you it was a waste of time, Wally. You are living in the past. But hey, do not worry. We have a plan." Megan walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. It felt heavy and fake. "See, Dad. This is why you need us. You are chasing fantasies while we are trying to deal with reality. But it is okay. We forgive you for running off." She guided me toward the house, stepping right over a pile of Dorothea's knitting yarn that had fallen in the grass. "Come inside," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "The real estate attorney is on his way. We have the papers ready. We can sign the house over, get the cash, and get you settled at Sunny Meadows by tonight. You will see. It is for the best. You do not have to worry about money ever again. We will handle everything." I let her lead me. I walked past the empty shelves where Dorothea's porcelain cats used to sit. I walked past the blank spots on the wall where our family photos used to hang. They had stripped the house. They had erased 40 years of life in a single afternoon. I sat down at the kitchen table. It was the only piece of furniture left in the room. "Okay, Megan," I whispered. "I am tired. I just want to rest." "Good," she said, patting my hand. "Just sign the papers, Dad, and then you can rest for the rest of your life." I looked at the pen she placed in front of me. I looked at the contract. I was going to sign. But not because I was giving up. I was signing because I was loading the trap, and when it snapped, it was going to take their fingers with it. The kitchen was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator, which was now the loudest thing in the house since they had stripped the walls bare. I sat at the laminate table, my hands resting on my knees, trying to stop them from trembling. It was not fear that made them shake. It was the adrenaline coursing through my veins, the kind of electric current I used to feel before a shift change at the plant, when the heavy machinery roared to life. But I had to make it look like fear. I had to make it look like age and defeat. Megan stood across from me, her arms crossed over her chest. She was watching me like a hawk watches a field mouse waiting for one wrong move. Brian was pacing behind her, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. He looked like a man who was drowning, and I was the only life raft in the ocean. "Well, Megan asked, her voice sharp. "What did they say, Dad? Stop dragging it out." I let my shoulders slump forward, collapsing into the posture of a beaten man. I stared at the scuffed linoleum floor, avoiding her eyes. "You were right," I whispered, my voice cracking just enough to sell the lie. I went to the manager. He ran the numbers. He said the book was just a glitch, an old account from the 90s that never got purged from the system. There was nothing in it, Megan. Just a balance of $5 and change. They laughed at me. I heard the air leave Brian's lungs in a massive whoosh of relief. It was the sound of a man who had just dodged a bullet. He let out a jagged laugh that sounded more like a bark. "I told you," he shouted, slapping his thigh. "I told you, Wally. You are living in a fantasy world. Did you really think Dorothy had a secret fortune stashed away? She bought her clothes at Kmart, for God's sake." Megan did not laugh. She just closed her eyes and tilted her head back, exhaling slowly. I saw the tension drain out of her neck. She was not disappointed that I was broke. She was relieved. If I had money, I had options. If I was broke, I was hers. "See, Dad," she said, opening her eyes and looking at me with that pitying expression that made my stomach turn. "I tried to tell you. I tried to save you the embarrassment. But you never listen. You always have to do things the hard way." "I am sorry," I mumbled, rubbing my face with my hands, making sure to cover the small microphone taped to my chest. "I just thought Dorothy was always so good with numbers." "Yeah, well, numbers do not magically turn into millions," Megan said dismissively. She pulled a chair out and sat down opposite me. The metal legs scraped loudly against the floor. She reached into her oversized designer bag and pulled out a thick stack of documents. She placed them on the table between us. "Okay, Dad. The fantasy is over. Now we have to deal with reality. The buyer Brian found is serious. He is a cash investor. He wants to close in 48 hours. He is offering $450,000. $450,000. The house was worth $600 easy in this market. They were selling it for pennies on the dollar, just to get a quick payout. They were setting fire to my equity because they were desperate." "That seems low," I said weakly. "It is a fair offer for a teardown," Brian interjected quickly, stepping up to the table. He leaned over, looming over me. "Look at this place, Wally. The roof is shot. The wiring is ancient. This guy is doing us a favor taking it off our hands without an inspection. If we wait for a regular buyer, we will be stuck here for months dealing with repairs we cannot afford. Do you have 20 grand to fix the roof? No, you do not. Because the magic bank book was empty." I looked at the papers. Power of attorney. Quitclaim deed. Transfer of assets. It was all there. A legal roadmap to stripping me of everything I owned. And then Megan pulled out a glossy brochure. She slid it across the table on top of the legal documents. It had a picture of a smiling, elderly couple sitting on a bench under a tree. "Sunny Meadows," she said, her voice taking on that sickly sweet tone again. "I called them while you were gone, Dad. They have a bed opening up tomorrow. It is meant to be." I looked at the brochure. I knew Sunny Meadows. Everyone in Detroit knew Sunny Meadows. It was a warehouse for the dying. It was understaffed, underfunded, and smelled of industrial cleaner and neglect. The photos in the brochure were probably stock images from 20 years ago. It looks nice, I lied, forcing myself to touch the paper. It is beautiful, Megan lied right back. They have a garden, Dad. They have bingo nights. They have a cafeteria with a nutritionist. You will have your own room. Well, a shared room, but you will have a curtain for privacy. It is safer there. You will not have to worry about cooking or cleaning or remembering to lock the door. She was painting a prison as a paradise, and she was doing it so easily. And the cost, I asked. It is taken care of, Brian said. We use the proceeds from the house to pay for your care. We will manage the account. We will make sure the bills get paid. You do not have to worry about a single thing. We are taking the burden off your shoulders, Wally. Taking the burden. That is what they called stealing $500,000. Megan pushed a pen toward me. It was a cheap plastic pen with the logo of Brian represents failed real estate brokerage on it. Sign the power of attorney first, Dad. Then the deed transfer. We need to get these notarized and over to the buyer as attorney first thing in the morning. If we do not lock this in, he might walk. And if he walks, she paused, letting the threat hang in the air. If he walks, you are alone in this empty house with no money and no one to help you. I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking violently now. I did not have to fake it. The rage was making my muscles spasm. I wanted to stab the pen into the table. I wanted to stand up and show them the black card in my wallet. But I remembered Sullivan, his voice in my earpiece. Get the admission. Get them to force you. I do not know, Megan, I stammered, dropping the pen. It is so fast. Can't we wait a week? Just to pack properly. There is nothing to pack, Brian snapped. We threw it all out. It was junk, Wally. Old clothes, dusty books. You do not need that stuff at Sunny Meadows. You need pajama pants and a toothbrush. You threw out your mother as things, I asked. Looking at Megan. Megan sighed. Dad, we went over this. Mom is gone. Her stuff was just clutter. We are trying to streamline your life. Now pick up the pen. She grabbed my hand and forced the pen back into my fingers. Her grip was tight, painful. Her fingernails dug into my skin. Sign it, Dad. Do it for us. Do it because you owe us. After everything we have done for you. After all the time we spent visiting you. Visiting. They came twice a year to ask for money. I held the pen over the signature line. I looked at the paper. I looked at them. Their eyes were hungry. They were not looking at me. They were looking at the ink that was about to flow. I took a deep breath. I cannot do it like this, I said, dropping the pen again. Megan slammed her hands on the table. For God's sake, Dad. What is it now? It is not right, I said, my voice trembling. It is not official. Dorothy always said big decisions should be done proper, with a lawyer present, or a notary. I want to do it right. Brian groaned, throwing his head back. We do not need a lawyer, Wally. This is a family matter. No, I said, finding a shred of firmness in my voice. I will not sign unless it is done proper. I want a witness. I want someone to stamp it. If I am giving you everything, I want it to be legal. I saw the gears turning in their heads. They were annoyed, but they were also greedy. They wanted the house sale to be bulletproof. If they bullied me into signing a loan, I could contest it later. But if they had a notary, if they had a lawyer, it would be ironclad. Megan looked at Brian. Maybe he is right. If we get Paul to come over. Paul. That was the forger the FBI told me about. Yeah, Brian said, rubbing his chin. Paul has a notary stamp. He can come tomorrow morning. We can make it look like a proper closing. Make the old man feel like he is a big shot. He did not whisper it. He said it right in front of me, assuming I was too deaf or too stupid to understand the insult. Fine, Megan said. Fine. We will do it your way, Dad. Tomorrow morning, Brian will call his associate. We will do a formal signing right here at this table. But you are signing everything, Dad. The house, the pension, the savings. Everything gets transferred to the trust we set up. I nodded slowly. Yes. Everything. I just want to be safe. Good, Megan said. She stood up and smoothed her dress. She looked at the empty kitchen. She looked at me. And then she smiled. A genuine smile. Because she thought she had won. She walked over to the refrigerator. I am starving, she said. All this drama has made me hungry. Brian, order some pizzas. The expensive ones from Mario is. And get some beer, we should celebrate. Celebrate, I asked. Yeah, Dad, Brian said, pulling out his phone. Celebrate your retirement. Celebrate the new chapter. By this time tomorrow you will be settling into your new room at Sunny Meadows and we will be taking care of business. He winked at Megan. I sat there while they ordered pizza. I sat there while they drank my beer, the last six-pack of the lager Dorothy used to buy me. I watched them toast to their good fortune. They ate greedily, grease running down their chins, talking about the trip to Hawaii they were going to book as soon as the house money hit their account. They ignored me completely. I was just a piece of furniture in the corner. A piece of furniture they were about to throw out. I ate a slice of plain cheese pizza because I needed the strength. I drank a glass of tap water. Megan was laughing at something on her phone. Brian was looking up flight prices. You know, Dad? Megan said between bites. This is really for the best. Mom would have wanted this. She would have wanted us to be happy. She hated seeing us struggle. I gripped my water glass. Dorothy hated seeing them struggle because they were lazy, not because the world was hard. You are right, I said softly. Your mother always wanted you to get what you deserve. Megan did not hear the double meaning. She just nodded. Exactly. The night wore on. They got drunker, they got louder. They started talking about the renovations they would do to their own house. A new pool. A home theater. I excused myself. I said I was tired. I said I needed to rest for the big day tomorrow. Go ahead. Dad, Brian waved a hand dismissively. Get your sleep. You have a lot of signing to do in the morning. I walked down the hallway to my bedroom. The mattress was bare because they had stripped the linens. The closet was empty. I lay down on the bare mattress in my clothes. I could feel the wire taped to my chest. I could feel the passbook in my pocket. I stared at the ceiling, listening to my daughter and her husband laugh in my kitchen. They were celebrating my destruction. They were celebrating the death of my wife because it was their payday. Let them laugh, I thought. Let them drink. Let them think I am a confused old fool. Tomorrow morning they were bringing a criminal into my house to notarize a fraudulent document. Tomorrow morning they were going to put a pen in my hand. And tomorrow morning I was going to sign their warrant. I closed my eyes, but I did not sleep. I rehearsed my lines. I checked the wire. I prayed to Dorothy. Just one more day, Dottie, I whispered into the darkness. Just one more day, and then we clean house. Then we. The smell of pepperoni and cheap domestic beer filled the empty kitchen, hanging in the stale air like a toxic fog. It was a celebration, they called it. A party to toast the end of my life and the beginning of theirs. Megan had ordered 3 large pizzas from Mario, is the expensive place downtown that Dorothy and I only splurged on for anniversaries. Now greasy cardboard boxes sat open on the bare laminate table, the cheese hardening and the crusts scattered like bones. I sat in the corner on a folding metal chair, my hands wrapped around a glass of lukewarm tap water. I watched them eat. They devoured the food with a hunger that seemed unnatural. It was not just hunger for food, it was a hunger for victory. Megan tore into a slice with her teeth, leaving red sauce smeared on her chin. She did not bother to wipe it off. She was too busy laughing at something Brian had just said about the size of the swimming pool they were going to put in the backyard of their rental. "Another beer," Brian shouted, reaching into the cooler they had dragged into the middle of the room. He popped the tab, the sound echoing sharply off the bare walls. He raised the can toward me, his eyes glassy and unfocused. To Wally, he slurred, "The man of the hour. The man who finally came to his senses." "Cheers," Megan giggled, clinking her half-empty wineglass against his can. She had found a bottle of red in the back of the pantry, one Dorothy had been saving for Christmas, and she was drinking it out of a plastic cup. "To Sunny Meadows. May the bingo be thrilling and the nurses be deaf." They laughed together, a cruel synchronized sound that made my skin crawl. The small black microphone taped to my chest felt like it was burning a hole through my shirt. I shifted slightly, trying to keep my posture slumped, trying to look like the defeated old man they believed I was. I needed them to talk. I needed them to say the quiet part out loud. "You know, Dad," Megan said, leaning back in her chair and kicking her feet up onto the table. Her heels left scuff marks on the surface Dorothy used to polish every Saturday. "You should be thanking us, really. We are saving you from a lonely, miserable existence. This house is a tomb. It smells like old people and medicine." I gripped my water glass tighter. "Does it?" I asked, my voice trembling just enough. "Your mother loved this house. She kept it clean." "Yeah, well, Mom loved a lot of useless things," Megan sneered. "She loved those stupid porcelain cats. She loved coupon clipping. She loved pretending everything was fine when we were barely scraping by. God, she was exhausting. Always hovering, always asking if I was eating enough, if I was happy. It was suffocating." She took a long gulp of wine, her eyes darkening. I waited a beat. I pressed my arm against my ribs, checking the wire. She got sick so fast, I whispered, looking down at my hands. It was a shock. One day she was fine, the next, her heart just stopped. Brian let out a snort of laughter. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Fast," he muttered. "It wasn't that fast, Wally. It took months." Megan shot him a warning look, but her eyes were hazy with alcohol. "Shut up, Brian." "No, babe, he is right," Brian said, waving his hand dismissively. "The old man doesn't know. He was too busy working at the plant or watching baseball. He didn't see it." "See what I asked?" looking up. My heart was hammering against the microphone. This was it. This was the moment. Megan sighed, rolling her eyes. She looked at me with a mixture of pity and disdain. "Dad, Mom was weak. Her heart was a ticking time bomb. We just helped nature take its course." "Helped?" I asked softly. Brian leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table. He lowered his voice to a conspiratorial whisper, as if we were sharing a harmless secret. "Those pills, you know," he said. A wicked grin spreading across his face. "The blue ones. The ones she took for her blood pressure." My blood ran cold. "The blue pills. Digoxin, yeah." Megan interrupted, her voice hard. "She hated taking them. Said they made her dizzy. But I made sure she took them, Dad. Every single Sunday when I came over for tea, I made sure she took extra, just to be safe." She giggled again, but this time it sounded manic. "You have to break a few eggs to make an omelet, right, Dad? We needed the insurance money months ago. If she had just gone sooner, we wouldn't be in this mess with the bookies. We wouldn't have to sell the house so fast." She dragged it out. She was stubborn. Even her heart was stubborn. There it was. The confession. Clear as day. Recorded on the wire taped to my chest. They had poisoned her. They had increased the dosage week after week, frustrated that she wouldn't die fast enough to pay their gambling debts. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I almost vomited right there on the floor. I wanted to lung across the table and wrap my hands around their throats. I wanted to scream. I wanted to kill them. But I froze. Brian stood up. He swayed on his feet, his face flushed red. He looked at me, and for a second, I thought he saw the rage in my eyes. I thought he saw through the mask of the senile old man. He stumbled toward me, arms wide open. "Ah, Wally," he slurred. "Do not look so sad. It is the circle of life, buddy. Out with the old, in with the new. Come here. Give your son-in-law a hug." Panic spiked in my chest. If he hugged me, he would feel the wire. He would feel the battery pack taped to my side. He would know. I shrank back into the chair, pressing my spine against the metal. I am not feeling well, Brian," I stammered, raising my hands to ward him off. "Please, I think I need to use the bathroom." Brian ignored me. He lunged forward, wrapping his thick, sweaty arms around my shoulders. He squeezed hard, his breath hot and smelling of stale beer and pepperoni right in my face. "You are a good guy, Wally," he mumbled into my ear. "A little slow, but a good guy. We are gonna take care of you. We are gonna put you in that home and you are gonna sleep all day. Just like Dorothy." His hand slid down my back. He patted my shoulder blade, then his hand moved lower toward my ribs, toward the wire. My breath caught in my throat. Time seemed to stop. His fingers grazed the edge of the tape holding the device. If he moved his hand 1 inch to the left, it was over. He would find it. He would realize I was a snitch. And in their drunken, desperate state, they might not wait for the nursing home. They might decide to finish me off right here in the kitchen, just like they did Dorothy. I stiffened my muscles, tensing for a fight. I calculated the distance to the steak knife sitting on the counter behind me. "Hey, Brian," Megan shouted from the table. "Leave him alone. You are getting grease on his suit. We need him presentable for the notary tomorrow." Brian paused. His hand hovered over the wire. He patted my back heavily once, twice. "Right," he said, pulling away. "Sorry, Wally. Just feeling the love tonight. We are gonna be rich." He stumbled back toward the cooler, grabbing another beer. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My heart was racing so fast I thought it might interfere with the recording. I stood up, my legs shaking uncontrollably. "I need to lie down," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I am very tired." "Go on then," Megan said, waving a hand dismissively. "Get your rest, Dad. Tomorrow is a big day. Paul is coming at 9. We sign the papers, we get the check, and then we drive you to Sunny Meadows. It is going to be a great day." I walked out of the kitchen, feeling their eyes on my back. I walked down the dark hallway to my bedroom. I closed the door and leaned against it, locking it quietly. I sank to the floor in the dark. I reached into my shirt and carefully peeled the tape back, adjusting the wire. The red light was still blinking steady and true. I had it. I had everything. I had the confession. I had the motive. I had the cruelty. They thought they were celebrating a victory. They thought they were drinking to their future, but they were drinking to their own funerals. I lay down on the bare mattress, clutching the recorder to my chest like a talisman. I could still hear them laughing in the kitchen. Laugh while you can, I thought, staring into the darkness, because tomorrow morning the check comes due, and the price is going to be higher than you can ever pay. The morning sun was blinding as Brian drove us to the strip mall on the edge of town. He and Megan were wearing sunglasses to hide their hangovers, nursing travel mugs of black coffee and snapping at each other about the GPS. I sat in the back seat of their leased BMW, my hands resting calmly on my knees. The wire was still taped to my chest, but I didn't feel it anymore. It had become a part of me like a second skin. We pulled up in front of a nondescript brick building sandwiched between a discount vape shop and a payday loan center. A taped-up piece of paper in the window read, P. Hayes Notary and Legal Services. It was the kind of place where desperate people went to make bad decisions. "Get out, Dad," Megan muttered, pushing her sunglasses up her nose. "And try to look alive. We need this to look professional." I stepped out onto the sidewalk. I adjusted my suit jacket, feeling the weight of the black metal card in my wallet and the passbook in my pocket. They thought they were taking a lamb to the slaughterhouse. They didn't know the lamb was packing a detonator. Inside, the office smelled of stale cigarette smoke and cheap air freshener. The carpet was stained and the fluorescent lights hummed with an irritating buzz. Sitting behind a metal desk was a man who looked more like a used car salesman than a lawyer. He wore a suit that was 2 sizes too big and had a nervous tick in his left eye. This was Paul, the forger, the man the FBI had told me about. "Ah, the happy family," Paul said, forcing a greasy smile. He didn't stand up. He just gestured to the 3 mismatched chairs in front of his desk. "I have the papers ready. Standard quitclaim power of attorney, full asset transfer. Just need the signature and my stamp, and you kids are golden." Megan sat down and crossed her legs, tapping her foot impatiently. "Let's just get this over with, Paul. My dad isn't feeling well. We need to get him to the facility by noon." Brian leaned against the doorframe, trying to look casual but failing. His eyes kept darting to the safe in the corner of the room. I knew what he was thinking. He was already spending the money. He was already placing bets. Paul slid a thick document across the desk. It was heavy-bound in a blue legal folder. He flipped it open to the last page, pointing a yellow-stained finger at the line marked Grantor. "Right here, Mr. Bennett," Paul said. "Sign your name exactly as it appears on the deed. Wallace J. Bennett. Once you sign this, the house belongs to the trust controlled by your daughter and son-in-law. It's irrevocable. Do you understand?" I looked at the paper. It was a death warrant for my independence. It was a document that said I was too old, too stupid, and too useless to own the roof over my head. "I understand," I said softly. Megan sighed loudly. "Dad, pick up the pen. Don't start having a moment now." I reached out. My hand hovered over the cheap ballpoint pen lying on the desk. I let it tremble. I let it shake so much that Brian groaned in frustration. He pushed off the wall and marched over to me. He grabbed my shoulder, his fingers digging into the muscle. "Sign the damn paper, Wally," he hissed in my ear. "Or so help me God. We will drive you to Sunny Meadows right now and drop you off at the curb without a toothbrush. You sign or you lose everything." I looked up at him. I looked at his sweaty face, his bloodshot eyes. I looked at Megan, who was checking her nails, bored by the destruction of her father's life. I picked up the pen, and then the trembling stopped. It stopped instantly. My hand became as steady as it used to be when I welded chassis frames on the assembly line. The weakness vanished. The confusion in my eyes cleared, replaced by a focus sharp enough to cut glass. I gripped the pen. I felt the cold steel of the desk under my wrist. I looked at the signature line. Wallace J. Bennett. I didn't write my name. Instead, I pressed the tip of the pen into the paper and wrote a number. 3. I wrote it slowly, deliberately carving it into the fiber of the page. 8. Megan frowned, leaning forward. "Dad, what are you doing? That's not your name." 5. I ignored her. I kept writing. 0. Brian leaned closer, squinting at the paper. "Is he having a stroke?" "What is that?" "A code." I finished the last 0 and set the pen down with a decisive click. I sat back in the chair, crossing my arms over my chest. I looked at Paul, then at Brian, and finally at Megan. "That is not a stroke, Brian," I said, my voice strong and deep, filling the small room. "That is the account number you threw in the trash yesterday." Megan froze. Her mouth fell open. What? I reached into my pocket. I moved slowly, letting the suspense hang in the air like smoke. I pulled out the gray passbook still stained with a faint ring of tomato sauce on the cover. I placed it gently on top of the legal documents. I opened it to the last page. I pointed to the handwritten balance. $3,850,000, I said, enunciating every syllable. The room went silent. Dead silent. You could hear the hum of the lights and the ragged breathing of three greedy people realizing they had made a fatal miscalculation. Megan stared at the book. Her eyes bulged. She reached out a shaking hand to touch it, but I slapped her hand away. Do not touch it, I snapped. You called it junk. You threw it in the garbage. You said Mom never had any money. I stood up. I towered over them. The old man posture was gone. I was 6 feet of anger and justice. She wasn't poor Megan. She was smart. She saved every penny while you were buying designer purses. She invested while you were leasing cars you couldn't afford. And she hid it because she knew. She knew exactly what you would do if you found out. Brian was hyperventilating. He looked at the number, then at me, then at the number again. 3 million. Wally. Dad. Is that real? Is that cash? It is real, I said, pulling my wallet out. And it belongs to me. I pulled out the obsidian card. The black metal caught the fluorescent light gleaming like a weapon. I dropped it onto the desk. It landed with a heavy metallic clang that sounded like a prison door slamming shut. The bank gave me this yesterday, I said. Unlimited access. I could buy this entire strip mall right now and turn it into a parking lot if I wanted to. Megan looked at the card. Her face went from shock to a twisted, desperate greed. She looked at me and I saw the wheels turning. She was trying to pivot. She was trying to find a way to rewrite the last 48 hours. Dad. She stammered, a fake smile trembling on her lips. Dad, why didn't you tell us? We wouldn't have tried to sell the house if we knew you were secure. We were just worried about you. This changes everything. We're rich, I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. There is no we. I looked at the legal papers. I picked up the folder and tossed it at Paul. You can shred these, I said. I won't be signing over my house. And I won't be going to Sunny Meadows. I turned to Brian. And you, I said. You owe $80,000 to people who break legs for a living. You thought selling my house was going to save you. Brian nodded frantically, sweat pouring down his face. Wally, please. We're family. You have millions. You can help me. Just a loan. I'll pay you back. I laughed. It was a cold, harsh sound. Pay me back with what you have? Nothing, Brian. You are a leech. And leeches don't pay debts. They just suck until there is nothing left. I reached into my jacket pocket again. But don't worry, I said. I didn't come here just to brag. I brought something for you too. I pulled out the composition notebook. The evidence of murder. I slammed it down on the desk next to the black card. This is Mom's diary, I said. And inside are the lab results from the tea you gave her. The color drained from Megan's face so fast she looked like a corpse. She backed away until she hit the wall. Dad, what is that? It's the end of the line, Megan, I said. It's the receipt for the poison you fed your mother. And then before she could scream, before she could run, the door to the office exploded inward. The explosion was deafening. Splinters of the cheap laminate door sprayed across the room like shrapnel. Dust billowed in the air, swirling in the fluorescent light. Men in tactical gear swarmed through the breach, their voices booming commands that overlapped into a wall of noise. Federal agents, hands in the air, nobody move. Paul the forger hit the floor instantly. He knew the drill. He curled into a ball under his desk, whimpering, his hands laced behind his head. But Megan and Brian, they didn't move. They didn't drop to their knees. They didn't look at the agents pointing rifles at their chests. They were looking at the desk. They were staring at the gray passbook and the black metal card as if they were holy relics. The shock that had paralyzed them a moment ago was mutating. It was twisting into something uglier, something primal. I watched the fear drain out of my daughter's eyes, replaced by a feverish, desperate hunger. The number I had written, 3,850,000, was burning a hole in her retina. 3 million, Megan whispered. Her voice was trembling, but not with terror. It was vibrating with greed. $3 million. She took a step forward. An agent shouted, "Ma'am, get on the ground now!" She ignored him. She ignored the red laser dot dancing on her shoulder. She looked at me, her eyes wide and manic, a twisted smile stretching her lips. "Dad," she said, her voice breathy and erratic. "Dad, wait. Wait a second. If Mom had that money, then it's ours. It's family money. We don't need to sell the house. We don't need to fight." She took another step, her hand reaching out, her fingers hooked like claws. "Give it to me, Dad. I'm the executor. I'm the next of kin. I need to manage that. Brian, look. We're rich." Brian was hyperventilating, his gaze darting between the card and the passbook. The $80,000 he owed the bookies was nothing compared to this. The debt, the fear, the threats, it all evaporated in the face of that black card. He lunged. "Wally, buddy!" he shouted, stumbling toward the desk, ignoring the armed agents closing in. "We can fix this. We can pay everyone off. Just hand it over. We're partners, remember?" It was the most pathetic, grotesque display I had ever seen. They were standing on the edge of a cliff, about to fall into a prison cell, and they were trying to loot the bodies before they hit the ground. "Stop!" I barked. My voice cut through the chaos, louder and sharper than the police commands. I snatched the passbook and the card from the desk before their sweaty hands could touch them. I held them up high above my head like a judge holding a gavel. "You want this?" I asked, my voice cold as the grave. "You want the junk? You want the clutter?" Megan lunged across the desk, her fingernails scraping the wood. "It's not junk. It's my inheritance. Give it to me. You're senile. You can't handle that kind of money. It belongs to me." An agent grabbed her arm, spinning her around, but she fought him, thrashing like a wild animal, her eyes never leaving the passbook. "No. Get off me. That's my money. He stole it from me." I looked at her. I looked at the creature I had raised, the woman who had poisoned the mother, who gave her life all for a payout. "It never belonged to you," I said, lowering my hand and placing the items back in my jacket pocket, right next to my heart. "And it never will." I reached into my shirt. I ripped the tape that had been holding the wire to my chest. The sound of the adhesive tearing was sharp and final. I pulled the small black device free, the red light still blinking steady and true. Megan froze. The agent had her pinned against the file cabinet now, but she stopped struggling. She stared at the wire in my hand. "What? What is that?" she gasped. "This," I held it up. "This is the rest of the inheritance, Megan. You wanted the assets. Well, here are the liabilities." I pressed the playback button. The audio was tinny, but in the sudden silence of the room it was crystal clear. It was Brian's voice, recorded just last night in my kitchen. "Those pills, you know. The blue ones. She hated taking them. But I made sure she took them, Dad. Every single Sunday. I made sure she took extra." Megan's face went the color of ash. Her knees buckled. Brian, who was being cuffed by two agents against the wall, started sobbing. No, that's out of context. That's not what I meant." "And this phone," I said, pulling a folded piece of paper from my pocket, the lab report from the notebook. I unfolded it and slammed it onto the desk. "This is the toxicology report. Digoxin, lethal levels. You didn't just wait for her to die. You murdered her." The room seemed to shrink. The air was sucked out of it. Even the agents paused for a second, looking from me to the woman pinned against the cabinet with a new disgust. Megan looked at me. Her mask was gone. The arrogance, the entitlement, the fake concern, it was all stripped away, leaving nothing but a scared, vicious child. "She was old," Megan screamed, spit flying from her mouth. "She was useless. She sat in that house hoarding money while we struggled. She owed us. She didn't even spend it. She just let it rot in a book. She was saving it." I roared back, my voice shaking the walls. "She was saving it for you. She wanted to surprise you. She wanted to pay off your house. She wanted to send your kids to college. She lived on coupons and wore old coats so she could give you a kingdom, and you killed her for the copper wiring." I walked around the desk. I stood inches from her face. The agent holding her stepped back slightly, giving me the space I had earned. Megan looked at me, tears streaming down her face, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of loss. She was mourning the money she would never touch. "She was a librarian," Megan whispered, shaking her head. "She was a nobody. She was poor." I leaned in close. I wanted her to hear this. I wanted this to be the last thing she remembered before the cell door slammed shut. "Your mother wasn't poor, Megan," I said, spacing out every word like a punch. "She was the richest woman I ever knew. She had patience. She had discipline. She had love. She had a richness of spirit you couldn't understand in 1,000 lifetimes." I straightened up, adjusting my cheap suit jacket. I looked at Brian weeping on the floor. I looked at Paul shivering under the desk. And I looked at my daughter. "You look at a bank balance and you see wealth," I said. "I look at you and I see nothing. Empty. Bankrupt." I turned my back on her. "My wife wasn't poor," I said over my shoulder. "Only your character is poor, and that is a debt you can never pay off. Get them out of here," I said to the lead agent. "I have a funeral to finish." As they dragged her out, Megan began to scream. Not my name, not Dad. She screamed for the book. "The code!" she shrieked, her voice echoing down the hallway. "What's the code, Dad? Just tell me the code." I listened until the door slammed shut, cutting off her voice. Silence rushed back into the room. It was heavy, but it was clean. The air felt lighter. I touched the pocket where the passbook lay. "Anniversary," I whispered to the empty room. "The code was our anniversary." She would never know. And that was the final justice. The room was a hurricane of noise and motion, but I stood in the center of it like a statue made of cold iron. The tactical team moved with a precision that was terrifying to watch. They were a wave of black uniforms and leveled weapons sweeping through the small office like a scythe through wheat. I watched as they hauled Paul the forger out from under his desk. He was weeping snot running down his face, babbling about immunity deals and cooperating witnesses, but the agents just zip-tied his hands behind his back and dragged him out the shattered door like a sack of garbage. Megan was pinned against the file cabinet, her face pressed into the metal. An agent was reciting her rights, but she was screaming over him, her voice a shrill siren of panic and denial. "It was not me," she shrieked, thrashing against the restraint. "I did not do anything. It was Brian. It was all Brian. He owes the money. He made me do it. I am a victim here. Dad, tell them. Tell them he forced me." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had once sat on my shoulders to watch the Thanksgiving parade. I looked at the woman who had taken my credit card to buy a prom dress she swore she would pay back. She was not a victim. She was a predator who had finally met a bigger predator. Brian was on the floor a few feet away. 2 agents were kneeling on his back, cuffing his hands. When he heard Megan throw him to the wolves, he stopped crying. He lifted his head, his face purple with rage and the pressure of the floor against his cheek. "You lying witch!" he roared, spitting blood from a bitten lip. You forced me. You said your mother was taking too long to die. You said the interest on the loan was killing us. I did not buy the pills, Megan. You did. You used the dark web. You used your work computer because you thought no one would check. Megan stopped struggling. The color drained from her face, leaving it a mask of pure terror. Shut up, Brian, she hissed. Shut up right now. No, Brian yelled, his voice cracking. I am not going down for murder alone. I am not taking the needle for you. Officer, listen to me. I want to make a deal. I can tell you where the rest of the pills are. She hid them in the hollow leg of her vanity table. She ground them up into powder so they would dissolve faster in the tea. She measured it out on a kitchen scale. She laughed about it. She said she was giving the old lady a boost to heaven. I felt a phantom pain in my chest hearing the details. A kitchen scale. My wife is murder planned out like a recipe. They had turned our Sunday family dinners into an execution. Detective Sullivan stepped forward. He stood over Brian, looking down with the kind of disgust usually reserved for something you step in on the sidewalk. We know, Brian Sullivan said calmly. We have the search warrant for your house. My team is tossing that place right now. If there is a grain of powder left in that vanity, we will find it. But keep talking. Every word you say is just another nail in the coffin. Brian broke. He started babbling, spilling secrets like water from a broken dam. She forged the checks, too. The ones from last year. She practiced Wallia's signature for weeks. And the life insurance. She tried to change the beneficiary online, but she did not have the password. That is why she needed the house sold so fast. She needed the cash to pay off the Russians before they came for my thumbs. I just wanted to pay my debts. I did not want to kill anyone. She said it was mercy. She said Dorothy was suffering. Mercy. I walked over to where Brian lay. I looked down at him. She was not suffering, Brian, I said, my voice low and steady. She was happy. She was planting tulips. She was knitting a blanket for the grandchild. You two were too selfish to give her. The only thing she suffered from was a daughter who hated her and a son-in-law who was a coward. Brian squeezed his eyes shut, sobbing into the carpet. I turned to Megan. The agent had pulled her upright. She was handcuffed now, her expensive blazer twisted, her hair a mess. She looked at me, and for a second I saw the old Megan, the manipulator, the actress. Dad, she whispered, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up cheeks. Daddy, please, do not let them take me. I am scared. I am your little girl. You cannot let them put me in a cage. I made a mistake. I will fix it. I will pay it back. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding. Please, Daddy. She used the word daddy. She had not called me that since she was 12 years old and wanted a pony. She was playing her last card. She was trying to weaponize my love against me. But the tank was empty. There was no love left. She had drained it all with every drop of poison she fed her mother. I stepped closer to her. I looked deep into her eyes, searching for any sign of a soul. I saw only fear and greed. You are not my little girl, I said. My little girl died a long time ago. You are a stranger who broke into my house and killed my wife. Megan's face crumbled. The mask fell away completely, revealing the ugly, twisted thing underneath. I hate you, she screamed, lunging at me until the agent jerked her back. I always hated you. You were always so boring, so small. You and Mom with your coupons and your leftovers. You embarrassed me. I deserved better. I deserved to be rich. You were rich, I said, holding up the passbook one last time. You were the heir to a fortune. All you had to do was be a decent human being. All you had to do was wait. But you were too greedy. You wanted the fruit before it was ripe, and you chopped down the whole tree to get it. Take her away, I said to the agent. I am done with her. No. Megan screamed as they began to drag her toward the door. No, Dad, wait. The code. Give me the code. I can still use it for my lawyer. I need the money for my defense. You owe me that. You owe me a defense. I watched her go. I watched her heels drag across the floor, leaving black scuff marks on the cheap tile. I watched the door close behind her, cutting off her screams. I stood there in the silence that followed. The office was wrecked. The desk was overturned. Papers were scattered everywhere. It looked like a bomb had gone off. And in a way it had. The bomb that had been ticking in my family for years had finally exploded. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. The weight I had been carrying since the funeral, the weight of grief and confusion and betrayal, it was gone, replaced by a hollow, clean feeling. It was the feeling of a job finished, the feeling of clocking out after a double shift. Detective Sullivan walked over to me. He was putting his notebook away in his pocket. He looked tired but satisfied. That went well, he said. Better than expected. We have the confession on tape. We have the accomplice flipping on the mastermind. And we have the physical evidence secured. They are never getting out, Mr. Bennett. Not in this lifetime. I nodded. Good. That is good. Sullivan looked at me with concern. Do you have someone to call Mr. Bennett? A friend? A neighbor? You shouldn't be alone right now. It is a lot to process. I patted my pocket. I felt the outline of the passbook and the cold, hard edge of the obsidian card. I am not alone, Detective, I said. I have Dorothy. She is right here with me. She saw the whole thing. Sullivan smiled gently. I bet she did. She was a hell of a woman, Mr. Bennett. The best, I said. I looked around the room one last time. I looked at the spot where my daughter had stood and screamed that she hated me. I looked at the spot where my son-in-law had begged for mercy he didn't deserve. I took a deep breath of the dusty air. I am hungry, I said, realizing it was true. I haven't eaten a real meal in 3 days. Sullivan chuckled. I could eat. The paperwork on this is going to take hours. I reached into my wallet. I pulled out the black metal card. It caught the light, heavy and substantial. It looked like a tool for building a new life. Detective, I said, holding up the card. Do you like coffee? The expensive kind. Sullivan raised an eyebrow. I am a cop, Mr. Bennett. I drink sludge from a styrofoam cup. Not today, I said. Today we are drinking the good stuff. My treat. I walked toward the door, stepping over the debris of my former life. I didn't look back at the empty office. I didn't look back at the wreckage of my family. I walked out into the parking lot. The police cars were flashing their lights blue and red, reflecting off the glass of the storefronts. A crowd had gathered, attracted by the commotion. I saw neighbors pointing and whispering. I saw a police cruiser pulling away Megan in the back seat, her face pressed against the window, screaming silently. I watched it go. I watched it turn the corner and disappear, and then I turned my back on it. Come on, Detective, I said. I know a place downtown. It has white tablecloths and waiters who call you sir. Dorothy always wanted to go there, but we never did because we were saving for a rainy day. I looked up at the sky. It was blue and clear. Well, I said, it is raining now. We got into Sullivan's unmarked car. I sat in the passenger seat. I felt the passbook against my heart. $3,850,000. It was too late to save Dorothy. But it wasn't too late to save her memory. As we drove away, I started planning. I wasn't just going to buy coffee. I was going to buy justice. I was going to buy a legacy. And I was going to buy that red Mustang. The engine of the police car hummed a steady rhythm. It sounded like the future. The war was over. The cleanup had begun. And for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to the work. The gavel hit the wood block with a sound that felt like a heavy door slamming shut forever. It was 6 months after the raid on the notary office, and the courtroom was packed. People love a tragedy, especially when it involves money and murder. But I did not hear the murmurs of the crowd or the scratching of the reporters' pens. I only heard the judge represent's voice. It was calm, monotonous, and absolutely final. Megan Bennett Cole, you have been found guilty of murder in the first-degree conspiracy to commit fraud and elder abuse. The cruelty you exhibited toward your own parents is beyond the scope of understanding. You are sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Megan did not scream. She did not cry. She just stared at the table in front of her. She looked small in her orange jumpsuit. Her hair was dull without her expensive salon treatments. Her face was pale. She looked like a ghost. She did not look at me. She had not looked at me since the day in the office. I think she knew that if she looked into my eyes, she would see a mirror reflecting her own emptiness back at her. Brian got 15 years. He took a plea deal at the last minute, trading his testimony against Megan for a chance to see the outside world again before he died. When the bailiffs led him away, he looked at me. He mouthed the word sorry. I did not respond. I did not nod. I just watched him disappear through the side door. An apology is just noise when you have helped dig a grave. I walked out of the courthouse alone. Detective Sullivan offered to drive me, but I declined. I needed to walk. I needed to feel the pavement under my feet. I needed to breathe air that did not smell of recycled justice and floor wax. The next week, I went back to the house on Maple Street. It was the first time I had stepped foot inside since the night of the pizza party. The police tape had been removed, but the house still felt like a crime scene. It felt cold. The silence that used to be peaceful now felt heavy like the air before a thunderstorm. I walked through the rooms. The living room where Dorothy used to watch her game shows. The bedroom where we slept for 40 years. The kitchen where she died. I looked at the laminate table. I could still see the phantom image of Megan sitting there eating pizza, laughing about poisoning her mother. I could still hear Brian represent's slurping voice. This was not my home anymore. It was just a building made of wood and drywall and bad memories. It was a container for a life that no longer existed. I called a real estate agent. Not Brian represent's shady friend, but a reputable woman named Sarah, who had sold houses in the neighborhood for 30 years. I told her I wanted it gone. I do not care about the price, I told her standing in the empty hallway. I just want it sold to good people. A young family. Someone starting out. Someone who will fill these rooms with new noise. Sarah was efficient. She found a buyer in 3 days. A young couple expecting their first child. The husband was a mechanic. The wife was a teacher. They reminded me so much of Dorothy and me in 1980 that my chest ached. I sold it to them for $50,000 under the asking price. They cried when I signed the papers. They thought they were getting a deal. They did not know they were doing me the favor. They were taking a haunted house off my hands and turning it back into a home. Before the closing, I hired a junk removal service. I told them to take everything, the furniture, the curtains, the rugs, even the dishes. I did not want any of it. I did not want the chair Megan sat in. I did not want the glass Brian drank from. It was all tainted. It was all infected with their greed. I kept only a few things. A small box. Dorothy is knitting needles. A few photo albums from when Megan was a baby before the world corrupted her. And of course, the passbook. I stood in the driveway one last time. The dumpster was gone. The grass was starting to grow back where the heavy metal bin had crushed it. The hydrangeas were blooming again, resilient and bright blue. I locked the front door. I slid the key under the mat for the new owners. I did not look back. People say you should say goodbye to a house. You should walk through the rooms and touch the walls and thank it for the shelter. But I had nothing to say to this house. It had witnessed the best years of my life and the worst week of my existence. I walked down the driveway to the curb. I felt lighter, physically lighter. It was as if I had been carrying a backpack full of stones for 40 years, and I had finally set it down. The grief was still there, of course. You do not lose a wife like Dorothy and just get over it. But the anger was gone. The burning rage that had fueled me through the investigation and the trial had burned itself out, leaving behind a clean white ash. I was free. I had no wife. I had no children. I had no house. To most people, that sounds like a tragedy. A lonely old man with nothing left. But I checked my pocket. I felt the wallet with the black card. I felt the passbook. I was not empty. I was blank. I was a blank slate. I took a deep breath of the Detroit air. It smelled of exhaust and rain and possibility. I turned my back on Maple Street and started walking. I had one more purchase to make, one more promise to keep. And this time I wasn't going to be cheap. I was going to the dealership. The engine of the 1969 Ford Mustang roared to life with a sound that felt like a lion waking up in my chest. It was not a polite sound. It was a deep, guttural growl of raw American horsepower. I gripped the wooden steering wheel, feeling the vibration travel up my arms. It was the same vibration I used to feel on the assembly line, but this time it did not mean work. It meant freedom. The car was candy apple red, not just red, but a red so deep and shiny it looked like wet paint. Dorothy and I had seen a car just like this in a magazine back in 1975. We were sitting at our kitchen table counting pennies to buy formula for Megan. Dorothy had pointed at the picture and laughed, saying, "Hemebo in another life, Wally. Maybe when we win the lottery." Well, Dottie, I thought, shifting into first gear. We finally won the lottery. I pulled out of the dealership lot and hit the highway. But I wasn't in Detroit anymore. I had left the gray skies and the potholes behind. I was on the Pacific Coast Highway in California. The ocean was on my left, a vast, endless expanse of blue that sparkled like diamonds under the sun. The cliffs were on my right, golden and rugged. The wind whipped through the open convertible top, messing up my white hair, and for the first time in 40 years, I didn't care what I looked like. I didn't care about being respectable. I just cared about the speed. I pressed the gas pedal down. The car leaped forward. 60, 70, 80. The world blurred at the edges. The smell of salt air and high-octane gasoline filled my lungs. It was intoxicating. I looked over at the passenger seat. It wasn't empty. Sitting there, strapped in with the seatbelt, was the old leather passbook and a framed photo of Dorothy, the one where she was laughing at a picnic, her hair blowing across her face. "You would have loved this, Dottie," I shouted over the wind. "You would have complained about the wind messing up your hair, but you would have been smiling the whole time. I wasn't just burning gas. I was burning the past. Every mile I put on the odometer was another mile away from the betrayal, away from the memory of Megan throwing this book in the trash, away from Brian measuring my living room, away from the cold, lonely nights in a house that had stopped being a home. But I wasn't just a rich old man spending his inheritance on toys. I had kept my promise to myself. Before I left Detroit, I sat down with Dr. Montgomery, and we signed the paperwork for the Dorothy Bennett Justice Fund. I put $2 million into it. It was a legal defense fund specifically for seniors. It was money to hire sharks like Montgomery, to protect grandmothers from greedy grandchildren, to protect fathers from sons who wanted to steal their pensions. "We are going to make them pay, Dottie," I said to the photo. "Every time a kid tries to trick their parent into a nursing home just to steal a house, my lawyers are going to be there. We are going to be the nightmare of every ungrateful child in America." It felt good. It felt right. The money that Megan had killed for was now being used to stop people exactly like her. It was the ultimate justice. The poison she fed her mother had been turned into the antidote for others. I slowed down as the road curved around a massive cliffside. I pulled into a scenic overlook and cut the engine. The silence of the coast rushed in, replaced only by the rhythmic crashing of the waves against the rocks below. I sat there for a long time just watching the water. I took the passbook out of the passenger seat. I ran my thumb over the cover. The pizza stain was almost gone now, faded by time and care. The numbers inside were just ink and paper, but they represented a lifetime of love. Dorothy hadn't saved this money because she loved money. She saved it because she loved me. She wanted us to have this moment. She wanted us to be free. I wasn't lonely. People think that when you are old and you live alone, you must be lonely. But how could I be lonely? I had the sun on my face. I had a mission. I had the memory of a woman who loved me enough to plan a miracle from beyond the grave. I looked at her photo. The glass reflected the blue sky. "I did it, Dottie." I whispered, my voice thick with emotion, but clear. "I didn't let them win. I didn't let them take you from me. I protected your legacy." I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the clean ocean air. I felt strong. My back didn't hurt. My hands didn't shake. I felt like I was 25 again, with a full tank of gas and a paycheck in my pocket. I started the engine again. The V8 rumbled a low, steady purr that promised miles and miles of road ahead. I had a map in the glove box, but I didn't plan on using it. I didn't have a destination. I didn't have a deadline. I didn't have anyone waiting for me to die. I shifted gears and pulled back onto the highway. The road stretched out in front of me, a ribbon of asphalt leading into the horizon. I cleaned out the trash, I said to the wind, a smile spreading across my face. "Now it is time to live for us, Dorothy." I punched the gas, and the red Mustang shot forward, chasing the sunset, leaving the shadows far behind. My story teaches us that true value is never found on the surface. Megan looked at a dirty old book and saw junk. I saw a lifetime of sacrifice and love. We often endure disrespect from family, simply because of blood ties. But I learned the hard way that family is defined by loyalty, not DNA. Never mistake silence for weakness, and never let anyone make you feel like a burden in your own life. Sometimes the hardest thing to do, cutting ties with the people who hurt you, is the only way to finally be free. It is never too late to take back your dignity. If you believe justice was served today, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of redemption. Let me know in the comments, would you have bought the Mustang, or would you have used the money differently?